So let's talk about epigenetics. Now, I wrote a little bit about epigenetics, well, in previous books, and in my new upcoming book, I talk about it too. But I want to just start from scratch so that you really, really grasp this. So, epigenetics is the study of a cell's environment. Now, I know that in the book, The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, who's an amazing, amazing scientist, no doubt about it. Um, he gets credited with talking about epigenetics all the time. But actually, before he wrote his book, The Biology of Belief, a book came out called The Genie in Your Genes. And it was by Dawson Church. And since then, he's gone on and he's done, he really works with EFT and things like that. But he's the first time I learned about what epigenetics was. So, not splitting hairs over who deserves credit. They both do. They're both magnificent people. Bruce is a scientist, so I think it held a little more weight. But Dawson kind of introduced the idea, the concept, if you will. So what does it mean, epigenetics? It means to say that we all have a genetic predisposition. Like we already come packaged with our own DNA. And you hear people say, oh, diabetes runs in my family, or men in my family always die young, or whatever it is. And so we just assume that the genes are going to cause that situation or that disease or that illness to express itself in our life. But what we now know through epigenetics is that that's not necessarily true. For example, I bet you've heard before that every single human being has cancer cells in their body. Everyone does. And in some individuals, those cancer cells genetically express, and in other people, they stay silent even their whole life. So what gives? Well, what we know through epigenetics is that it's the environment of the cell that determines whether it's going to express or stay silent. So for example, if you say, well, diabetes just runs in my family, that just means that people in your lineage have been predisposed for whatever reasons. And I'm going to tell you the reasons, but for whatever reasons, your family line has been predisposed to diabetes. There is absolutely 1,000% chance that you never have to get diabetes because you can silence that genetic expression. And now the reasons are one, which everyone thinks has so much to do with everything, and it has so little to do with everything, okay? And that's environment. So yeah, if you live in a secondhand or firsthand smoke environment, or you're working around heavy machinery that is, carcinogenic, those things can definitely contribute. And then what that would be doing, let's just talk cancer, is if you're working in an environment around chemicals that are, cancerous, carcinogenic, then yeah, that environment could activate those genes. In other words, wake them up so that they would then express, by lung cancer or by whatever kind of cancer, a tumor somewhere. So that is environment, and environment does make a difference. But do you want to know where it really, really matters and where it can be healed spontaneously and where it can be caused almost just as spontaneous? And that is the environment of your thoughts and your emotions. It's so great because decades ago, people would just say, thoughts and emotions matter. But now science proves it. So if somebody, first of all, if you come from, let's just say everyone in your family had, I'm just going to use diabetes. Everyone in your family had diabetes, so you're genetically predisposed for it. And then you take lifestyle habits and you eat a lot of sugar and a lot of carbs that are not good for you. And your mind is always thinking about diabetes. And then if you're a stressful person and you're just always stressed out, or you lament about the past or you worry about the future, that's going to cause the emotions, the chemical reactions in your body that are cortisol and adrenaline and the chemicals that are harmful. And when you take all that together, of course, diabetes is going to express genetically. Does that make sense? But that's because you woke those little genes up. Now, if you think of it this way, you could say that your DNA is the piano, and that as the pianist, you're deciding which song to play. So if you don't want to play the song of cancer or diabetes, you don't have to. And when we say the song that we're playing, we're talking about thoughts, emotions, environment, and lifestyle. Those are the four factors. Those are the four factors that affect the cells in your body. Environment, lifestyle, yes, it matters. But thoughts and emotions, way more. Way more. Right? When you think about it, and I love to use Joe Dispenza as an example, because he works with this on a medical realm and a scientific realm. But he has doctors and researchers and people with EKGs, and they do blood tests and all of this at his big events. And so his genius is to take large groups of people. And it didn't start out being large groups, but now, people know, hey, I can go to a Dispenza event and heal my cancer. But so he takes these people and these big groups, and they're disconnected from environment and lifestyle. And then they're immersed in the thoughts and emotions that are healing. And then they even do group intention healing works, things like that. So that's where his genius lies. And he's very smart in that he has doctors and researchers and scientists there to take measurements from the biofields to the brain waves to the blood panels, to the cells. So he's contributing greatly to the idea of manifestation. I mean, that's not necessarily his goal, but that's where people are jumping out of wheelchairs, or people are saying, wow, I went for a 10-day event and now my cancer is gone. Okay, what's happening here? And this is what I really want you to get. It took this person perhaps, I'm just using an arbitrary number, but it took this person perhaps 30 years of disappointment, of anger, of suppressed rage, of working in an environment maybe that, maybe they worked on some place that caused cancer. Maybe they ate really crappy food that contributed to the cancer. So it took maybe decades for that cancer, that genetic disposition to be expressed. Took all that stuff, all those four factors. And then they can go spend 10 days. And what are they spending 10 days doing? They're disconnected from their lifestyle. They're disconnected from their environment, from their phones. And they're spending 3 or 4 hours a day in meditation. So they're getting they're getting beyond their body, beyond their mind. And they're around a bunch of other people, and we're all interconnected. So you got a bunch of other people there with a high vibe, a high frequency. That's going to help heal you just as much as you are going to help heal them. And it can happen like that. So that's what a spontaneous healing is. And you don't necessarily have to go somewhere for 10 days and, shut your life off and meditate 3 to 4 hours a day. I know some people who can't even meditate 3 to 4 minutes a day. But that's where the answer lies. And it doesn't lie in the fact that you have to be a meditator or a monk or join an ashram or a yoga studio. It just means that you have to disconnect from this environment that has contributed to the possibility of illness or disease or whatever it is, so that you can create coherence between your mind and your heart. Remember, when I talk about coherence, the mind doesn't have emotions. It produces the neuropeptides and the chemicals, but it doesn't have emotions. Your heart has emotions. Your heart doesn't have a will. Your heart just feels happy or sad or excited. But together, when they're both on the same wavelength, and I mean this scientifically as well as I do metaphorically, because when we put out the waves of the same heart-mind coherence intention, we're going to pull in waves that will be the same quality. And we use our mind to shape what that quality is. Like for me, I might be, I don't even know what I might be. I might be helping someone do something through radionics and through coaching that gets a fantastic result, like a miracle result. For you, maybe it's having $1 million. So the universe doesn't have an opinion. The unified field doesn't say, she's not been really nice, so I'm not going to give her that. Let's give her this. That's not how the universe works. Everything is a precise law. Everything works with exact precision. So what's the difference between me having a happy client versus you having $1 million is the thought that we put behind it. The emotion is the fuel that'll take it there. So if the unified field sees joyful thoughts and joyful emotions, that's coherence. But if I just send that out, who knows what I'll get back? But if I have it attached to an image of successful clients versus your $1 million, then that's like putting in the order correctly. It's like if you went to Amazon and you went to your cart and you said, I want 5 of these. It's like 5 of what? Pick something. So you got the mechanics. You know how to push a button. You got your credit card on file. You got the brain-heart coherence, but now you have to pick your item. See? So that's where you have to always start out knowing what you want. Now, one other thing I'm going to add about epigenetics, and I said this in my new book, and I've said it, in a couple of live talks I've given, so forgive me if you've heard it, but I just think it just needs repeating. It's just so important. And that is that we always think of genetic inheritance as physical. And what we have to understand is everything's energy, and epigenetically speaking, we also inherit things that are behavioral. So for example, and the example I always give, one example, is that when you were a fetus when your mom was a fetus in her mother, so your maternal grandmother, when your mom was a fetus in her belly, and it was 6 months old, your mother's fetus was 6 months old inside your grandma's belly, the seed of you, the nucleus of you, was already inside your mom's unborn little tiny body. So you have been being influenced not just physiologically, but energetically through your grandmother's whole pregnancy, through your mother's whole pregnancy, through your birth and your whole childhood. So we're not just born a blank slate like tabula rasa, which was always the thing in psychology. We're not born a blank slate. Not like that. Not energetically, we're not. So how would this apply to you? Well, let's look at something that, let's say your ancestors are from a country. I mean, and it could even be America. It could even be slavery or a war-torn country of some kind, or, the Holocaust. That fear and that scarcity that your ancestors felt are genetically, energetically handed down to you. Do you understand that? So sometimes we have a fear and we'll spend half of our adult lives looking for where it came from. Why am I so scared to speak in public? Why do men always dump me? Whatever it is. Now, I'm not saying that you can't trace things in your own lifestyle that you have attracted, accidentally of course, these things into your life. But more often than not, these are energetic patterns that came from one of your parents, that came from one of their parents, that came from one of their parents. Another way to look at epigenetics is if you have a sincere fear of spiders or snakes or something, and you've never had an incident and you have no idea why. And it could be something like your grandfather was killed getting bit by a rattlesnake. We don't know. And I think a lot of people, even a lot of coaches and therapists, spend too much time trying to dig it up. Let's go find it. Instead of just rewiring it neurologically, recalibrating it energetically, and re-embedding it in our nervous system, where we're coherent. We're happy. We're joyful. We're grateful. I have a shirt that says grateful. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I do. So anyway, that was my little lesson on epigenetics. I hope you found it useful. And where you can take this is just to remember, you're not your past biology. You are not your past biology. You are not at the mercy of your DNA. Your cells, every one of your cells' environments is completely up to you and within your ability to change. Even if your environment is conducive to, you're like, I live in a city and there's smoke all the time and pollution and there's nothing I can do. You are in full charge of the other three. You are in charge of your thoughts, your emotions, and your lifestyle. So that's why, it doesn't matter if people are like, oh, well, he was exposed to this when he was in the Navy, like my father was. Yeah, but he also smoked like a chimney and he was always angry. And he was always probably thinking, angry thoughts. So yeah, of course that's going to happen. Okay? So pay attention to the environment that your cells are living in. Your DNA is not your destiny. You get to choose what you do with your body and your brain. I hope you have